Chapter 6, Lesson 6. So we have two special triangles here that we're going to be discussing in this lesson, the 45-45-90 triangle and the 30-60-90 triangle. So when we have a 45-45-90 triangle, and remembering our isosceles triangle theorem says that if the base angles are equal here, then the legs are also equal. So when we do the math on that, if I let both of the legs be x, and I did the Pythagorean theorem, I would have x squared plus x squared equals hypotenuse squared. And then when I went to solve it, I would have to have 2x squared equals hypotenuse squared, divide both sides by 2, and take the square root. So what that simplifies down to is it tells you that whenever you are given one side of the 45 triangle, you can set up this proportion. Hypotenuse over the leg, and it doesn't matter either one because they're isosceles, which they're the same, is equal to the square root of 2 over 1. Now on the 30-60-90 triangle, they actually have two theorems. So the 30-degree angle is the smallest angle, so therefore the side opposite is the shortest leg. The 60 is the middle triangle, so the side opposite is called the long leg. And we know that anything that's across from the 90-degree angle is the hypotenuse. So two proportions we can set up here is the length of the hypotenuse over the short leg is a 2-to-1 ratio. And the length of the long leg over the length of the short leg is a 3-to-1 ratio. So in this exercise, we're given a 45-45-90 triangle. And for the first part, we're given that A equals 9. Since it's isosceles, we know that B would also be 9. So then for the part C, for the hypotenuse, we set up C over 9 equals square root of 2 over 1. And then for this book, we're going to leave it as 9 times the square root of 2. We're not going to give the decimal answer. For number 2, if B equals 5, we know that A equals 5. And so C over 5 equals the square root of 2 over 1. Cross multiply gives us C equals 5 square root of 2. In this next one, we're given that the hypotenuse is 2 square root of 2. And we don't know what the leg is. And we use it as square root of 2 over 1. So 1 times the square root of 2 and A times the square root of 2 will be set equal to each other. When I divide by the square root of 2 on each side, I figure out that A is 2, so B is also 2. On the last one, we set up 7 over the leg equals the square root of 2 over 1. So this would give me A square root of 2 equals 7. Divide each side by the square root of 2. And we'll leave it as 7 over the square root of 2. So that means that B is also 7 over the square root of 2. In this one, we have a 30-60-90 triangle. So remember that the hypotenuse over the short leg is a 2-to-1, and the long leg over the short leg is square root of 3 over 1. So M is the short leg because it's opposite the smallest angle. So if I know that M is 3, I would set up hypotenuse over 3 equals 2 over 1. So hypotenuse equals 6. Then I'd set up long leg over 3 equals square root of 3 over 1. So the long leg equals 3 square root of 3. On number 6, it tells me that the long leg is 8. So I set up long leg over short leg equals 2 over 1. So that would give me 2s equals 8. So s is 4. Then I know that the long leg over 4 equals square root of 3 over 1. So the long leg is 4 square root of 3. On this next one, it tells me the long leg is 2 square root of 3 over the short leg equals square root of 3 over 1. So m square root of 3 equals 2 square root of 3. Divide each side by the square root of 3, and m is 2. And since the hypotenuse is doubled, that would give the hypotenuse 4. On this one, the long side is 9. So that would give me m square root of 3 equals 9. So m equals 9 over the square root of 3. And since I need to double that to make the long side, I double it would be 18 over the square root of 3. This one tells you that this is a parallelogram, which tells you these two sides are equal and parallel, and these two sides are equal and parallel. And it wants to know what type of triangle is NOP. And since we know that in our quadrilaterals that the two correspond or consecutive sides equal 180, I know that angle P is 45 degrees. So if this is a 45 degrees and this is 90, this also has to be 45. So I know that these two sides have to be equal. So that makes this an isosceles or a 45, 45, 90. So then we know the length of NO has to be 10 because that's what OP is. Then in my 45, 45, 90, it says hypotenuse over the leg is a square root of 2 over 1 ratio. So the length of the hypotenuse is 10 square root of 2. The next one says find the altitude of an equilateral triangle. Equilateral means all sides are the same. Therefore, all angles will be the same. And if we're doing the altitude then of an equilateral, that would make this a 90. This would be a 60, and this would have to be a 30. So if the sides are 8.25, to find the short side, I would do 8.25 over short side equals 2 over 1. So that tells me that the short side is going to be 8.25 divided by 2, which is 4.125. And then if I take that times the square root of 3, that would give me a long side of 7.14. The perimeter of a square is 12 yards, which means each side is 3. And since it's a square, that means these are 90-degree angles, which makes this a 45, 45, 90. And it wants the length of the diagonal. Well, we know that the hypotenuse over the leg is a square root of 2 over 1 ratio. And so this would give me 3 square root of 2. The length of the diagonal of a square is 14. So we know that hypotenuse over the leg is square root of 2 over 1. So that would give me L times square root of 2 equals 14. So 14 divided by square root of 2 would give me the length of one side. Which is 9.9. That's one side, and it wants the perimeter of the square. And you find the perimeter by adding up all 4 sides. Which gives me a perimeter of 35.6.